Hey, welcome to Pastor Chat with Pastor Lynn. My name is Diana. This is Pastor Lynn. Thanks for being here. Pastor Lynn, you were talking about this past weekend kind of a tale of two kings, a king of the inside and a king of the outside. Tell us a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah, so just the easy version is that the first two kings of Israel, Saul and David. Saul is this guy on the outside. He looks like he ought to be king. Everybody sees him and says, that guy is kingly. And yet he was so lacking on his inward part, and nobody thought about that. David is just the opposite. He's the second king of Israel. When people look at him, no one thinks king with David. But his character was so amazing that he ends up being the best king that Israel ever has. So it's the king of the outside, Saul, and the king of the inside, David.
That makes sense. One of the things that was helpful is you asked us to think of people that we admire and what is it that we admired about them. So who are some of the people in history or in your life that you've admired?
Well, if you've been around any length of time at all, you've heard me talk about Pastor George. And I think the thing I tell people all the time, if George was a little bit like David, when people met him, nobody thought he was anything special. But then you were around him and saw his character and you just went, okay, this is a remarkable, remarkable man. And so George is one of them. If I go outside of that, I've always admired Abraham Lincoln. And a part of that is the character he had to stand for what he thought was right in that moment, the character to have the criticism that he had and just the hate and vitriol that was going on. And then to lead the nation once the war was over and everybody wanted to kind of retaliate on the South. And in that moment, he said, no, those are our brothers and we're going to go help heal their land. So just over and over and over again, the character of Lincoln is pretty astounding. Yeah.
That makes me think you said character never happens by accident. Character is always a decision.
Yeah.
So how could all of us watching, how can we make character a decision this week?
I think part of living life well is always reviewing my life, always thinking about the last situation I was in or the one I'm getting into. And asking myself the question, how do I live that moment well? Or if it's a past situation, how could I have better handled that moment? I was in the store the other day, I won't go through it, but the cashier was, slow. And the lady she was waiting on had 6 items. It took her 12 minutes. And it was just painful. And I'm going to I got to the end of it and I looked at him because it was continuing and I said, could this be any more ridiculous? And immediately, right, my heart goes, okay, Lynn, that was unnecessary. It wasn't what Jesus would have done in the line, right? And I think you and I have got to take moments like that, be honest about how we lived them, and then, resolve in our heart says, the next time. The next time it's 12 minutes in line and they're not being very sensitive to the fact that I'm going to be a little more like Jesus. I'm going to have better character.
But there's hope in that. So we can think about situations we're heading into. How do I want to act? How do I want to respond?
Yeah.
But we also get to review, because nobody lives life perfect, to
Right.
say, okay, I maybe didn't show my best character there, but how can I learn, adjust,
Yeah.
and do different?
And the one in I was right. It was crazy that it took 12 minutes to check out 6 items. But that moment of impatience in my life revealed something about my character, right? And so it's being aware of that, being honest about it. One of the things that commends David is that when he's confronted with his sin, he admits it. He goes, okay, that was what you say it was.
So speak to that. Why? So Scripture says that David was a man after God's heart. It doesn't quite say that about Saul.
Right.
But David wasn't perfect.
No, David messes up. Matter of fact, it's an interesting thing because Saul ultimately ends up disqualified as king over sin. But if you look at the sins that David did, they're probably just as great or maybe even bigger than Saul's, and yet God leans in with David. And again, I think it's this character issue. And the difference is, how did they deal with their sin when it was revealed? And if you watch the life of Saul, he begins to make excuses. He begins to blame it on other people. He tries to justify what he never deals with his sin. In contrast to that, when David's confronted with the sin, he immediately goes, oh, you're right. I've been wrong in this moment, right? And, it's interesting when I was raising Joshua, I would say to him, hey, a good man is not a good man because he never does a wrong thing. A good man is a good man because he goes back to the messes he's made and he cleans them up. And I think that's the contrast in character between a Saul and between a David.
That's really good. So kind of taking care, being a king of the inside means let's take care of the inside. Let's confess that to God. Let's go back and repair relationships, all that jazz. And let's walk forward with character.
Yeah.
So today, thanks for listening to this pastor chat with Pastor Lynn. It doesn't rhyme as fun as pastor chat with Pastor Pat, but we're really glad you're here. So thanks for being here. Go ahead and do what Pastor Lynn said. What if we take some time to reflect on situations we've been in, or think about how could we give our inside some time and attention this week? Thanks for being here.
Baby.